Human history is not just about kings, wars, or inventions. It's the story of us as a species, how we came from being just another kind of animal, roaming the savannas of Africa, to becoming the most powerful creature on Earth. Yuval Noah Harari's book, Sapiens, tells this story. And when we unpack it, we see that it's not just about the past. It's also about the future, about who we are becoming, and the challenges that lie ahead. Let's begin at the very start. Around 70,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened. Before that time, humans weren't all that special. In fact, there were many kinds of humans living on Earth, not just us. There were Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia, the Denisovans in Asia, Homo erectus still lingering in some places, and a few other cousins scattered around. We, Homo sapiens, were just one species among many. And honestly, we weren't the strongest. Neanderthals, for example, were tougher, stronger, and more adapted to cold climates. So why did we, and not they, take over the world? The answer lies in what Harari calls the cognitive revolution. This was a turning point in human history when our species developed a unique ability, the power of imagination and storytelling. Unlike other animals, we could not only communicate about real things, like there's a lion near the river. We could also talk about things that don't exist in the physical world. We could invent myths, tell stories, and share beliefs that bound us together. This gave us a huge advantage. Think about it. Ants and bees can cooperate in large numbers, but only in very rigid ways. Chimps can work together, but usually only with close friends and relatives. Humans, though, we can cooperate flexibly with thousands, even millions of strangers because of shared beliefs. We can believe in nations, religions, money, laws, and ideas. None of these exist in nature. They only exist in our collective imagination. And yet, they shape everything we do. This is the secret superpower of Homo sapiens. With this new ability, we could form larger groups, coordinate more effectively, and eventually outcompete every other human species. Within a few thousand years, all the others, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and the rest, were gone. We don't know exactly how they disappeared, but it's clear that we, the storytellers, were the ones who survived. After the cognitive revolution, the next big leap was the agricultural revolution, around 12,000 years ago. For most of our existence, humans lived as hunter-gatherers, moving around, collecting plants, and hunting animals. Life wasn't easy, but it was varied. People ate different foods, worked fewer hours than we might expect, and lived in relatively equal groups. Then farming changed everything. At first glance, agriculture seems like progress. Humans began to settle in one place, grow crops, and domesticate animals. Populations grew, villages turned into towns, and towns into cities. But Harari points out something surprising. Farming may not have been the blessing we often imagine. In many ways, it was a trap. Farmers often worked harder than hunter-gatherers, ate less nutritious diets, and lived in more crowded conditions that spread diseases. Wheat, rice, and corn didn't domesticate us. We domesticated ourselves for their sake. Humans began bending their entire lives around these plants, and in doing so, we lost much of the freedom we once had. Still, agriculture set the stage for the rise of complex societies. Larger groups meant more coordination, but that required new systems of order. This is where myths and imagined realities came in again. Religions, kingdoms, empires, money. All of these were human inventions that allowed huge numbers of people to trust one another and work together. For example, money has no value on its own. A piece of paper or a digital number is meaningless unless we all agree that it represents value. That shared belief powers entire economies. Over time, these systems grew more sophisticated. Writing developed as a way to keep records, track debts, and manage kingdoms. Empires rose and fell, religions spread, and cultures blended. Humanity became increasingly interconnected, especially through trade and conquest. Every time groups collided, new exchanges of ideas, goods, and technologies reshaped the world. Then came another turning point, the scientific revolution, beginning about 500 years ago. For most of history, humans had explanations for the world rooted in myth and tradition. But science introduced a new approach, admitting ignorance. Instead of saying, "The gods control the weather," scientists asked, "What really causes storms?" And they searched for evidence. This mindset unleashed discoveries that transformed our world: medicine, machines, electricity, industry, computers, and eventually space travel. Our knowledge exploded, and with it, our power. But science didn't work alone. It teamed up with politics and economics. Capitalism, for instance, encouraged constant growth and innovation. Governments funded exploration and conquest. Together, these forces created the modern world. Harari reminds us that much of what we take for granted, like nations, banks, corporations, and even human rights, are still imagined orders. They are stories we tell ourselves, powerful enough to shape reality. Of course, this progress came with costs. Empires expanded violently. The Industrial Revolution brought not just factories and wealth, but also pollution, exploitation, and the destruction of traditional ways of life. Colonialism redrew the map, often brutally. And while humans thrived, the natural world suffered. Harari points out that we have caused mass extinctions of countless species, often without even realizing it. Our rise has reshaped the planet in ways that may not be sustainable. And this brings us to perhaps the most important part of the story: where we are now and where we are headed. For most of history, humans were like every other animal, struggling to survive, facing famine, disease, and war. Today, many of those threats are under control. Famine, while not gone, is far less common. Diseases can often be cured or prevented. Wars, though still real, kill fewer people today than in centuries past. For the first time, humanity's main challenges are not survival, but finding meaning, purpose, and balance with the planet we dominate. And here's the twist: with biotechnology and artificial intelligence, we are beginning to change what it means to be human. We are entering what some call the era of Homo Deus, the human god. We are tinkering with genes, engineering life, and building machines that might surpass our own intelligence. In the future, we may design new species, merge with technology, or even aim for immortality. But these possibilities raise huge questions. Who will control this power? Will it create equality or deepen inequality? Will it give us freedom or enslave us to systems we can't control? Harari warns that while humans have become incredibly powerful, we are not necessarily happier. Ancient hunter-gatherers may have lived freer, more balanced lives than many people today. We've conquered nature, but we still struggle with our own minds: anxiety, stress, loneliness, and endless desires. The stories we create shape our lives, but they also trap us. Nations demand loyalty. Religions demand faith. Corporations demand productivity. Even our technologies demand attention. So the question remains: are we using our power wisely, or are we drifting toward a future we may regret? Unpacking, Sapiens reminds us that everything around us, our countries, economies, laws, even the idea of human rights, are built on shared fictions. This isn't to say they aren't real or important. Quite the opposite. These stories are what allow us to cooperate and build civilizations. But they are still stories, which means they can change. We don't have to be bound by the myths of the past. We can imagine new ones, better ones. The journey of Homo sapiens is far from over. We began as small bands of foragers, telling stories around fires. Today, we live in a global civilization, connected by satellites, the internet, and global trade. Tomorrow, we may shape life itself or explore other planets. The real question is, what stories will we choose to guide us into that future? Because in the end, Our greatest power is not just intelligence or technology, it's imagination, the ability to believe together in things that don't physically exist. That is what made us the rulers of the planet, for better or worse. And that same power will decide where we go next. So when we look back at the story of humanity, from the cognitive revolution to agriculture, from science to technology, we see not just a tale of survival, but a tale of imagination. We invented gods, money, nations, and corporations. We invented rights, laws, and systems. And now, we may even invent new forms of life. That is both thrilling and terrifying. But it is also what makes us human.